Hey guys, thanks for joining us again this week. We're excited to bring you another new industry professional, this time from the music and entertainment industry. I'm excited to learn more about this career path, so let's go ahead and get started. Scott, thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
We're excited to have you. Would you mind taking just a few minutes to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're from?
Yeah, my name's Scott Safford. I'm an entertainment lawyer, which means for me, I represent songwriters and country music artists for the most part. I'm from Bowling Green, Kentucky, and have lived in Nashville since 2000. Well, since 2000, and started out working for a record label. Worked there for 7 years and started my own practice in 2007 ish, and that's what I've been doing for the last however many years that is. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure in Nashville you have endless supply of country artists to work with.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of people that need help, and more so than the country music artists, it's the songwriters. There's probably 5 to 10 to 1 successful songwriters to successful country music artists. So a lot of what I do is helping aspiring songwriters and then successful songwriters. At first you're trying to help people get into situations where a songwriter or a country music artist, it's kind of, sometimes it's the same thing because country music artists are songwriters, but they come to town and they've made what I consider a very courageous decision to come here and compete with the best of the best and try to make it in a town where it's very competitive and you're doing something. It's songwriters and artists. It's, looking at my own experience, there's a lot of people who will support you going to law school, going to college, being an English major, going to law school. It seems like a career path that people want to be like, wow, Scott's being a lawyer. That's great. And so it's you get a little more support doing more traditional paths than you do as a songwriter or an artist. There's a lot of people who are intentional doubters, and then there's some who are unintentional in their questioning of that career path. So when someone makes it here and decides they're going to be here to do that, I think it's a very courageous step. And when they get here, they need help finding people who can be helpful to them. And they also need help staying away from people who will not be helpful to them. So that's kind of the first step of me getting involved. And what I do on the front end is helping get creative people to pointed towards people who can help them. And then as their career develops, it becomes more of trying to protect their assets and making sure they have the best deal where they are and trying to figure out when it's time to make certain business moves and decisions. And it becomes more strategic at that point. And then at some point, country music artists become small businesses, and where you kind of function as a general counsel role where we are, managing the legal aspects of their career, which can be daunting. They have a lot that goes on once they're a very successful country music artist. So
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that would be an extremely fulfilling career to know that you're helping someone who's making their dreams come true. And I bet it's really cool to see that process and that journey for them.
oh, that's what makes it all worthwhile. And I'm so fortunate to have a job where you can see the beginnings of someone who has no clue of where to go or who to turn to, and you help them turn to the right people. And then you see that culminate in success, and you see you know, uh, their following of their dreams be rewarded with success. I mean, I'm really fortunate to be in a position where there's that level of fulfillment on the back end of what I do. Because I know there's a lot of jobs where it's hard to see. You kind of have to sort through a few layers to get the fulfillment and see sort of the end results of your work, and they're not quite as apparent as it is when you see someone sign their first publishing deal or their first record deal or have their first #1 record or win their first CMA award. I mean, all of that is just, there's these moments where you can really step back and say, wow, I was a small part of that. I helped that happen, and look at that person fulfilling their dreams. And it's one of the really good parts about my job, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds very exciting. So, could you tell us a little bit about what your daily professional activities look like? When you wake up and you go into the office, what does a normal day look like for you?
Well, that's the unfortunate side of my job. If you could see, like, I got my laptop here because of the webcam, but over here is a really big monitor that has a bunch of emails and Word documents. And so the glamorous part of my job, we talked about. The unglamorous part of my job is we have the responsibility of making sure every word in 30-page Word documents is accurate and correct, because one word the wrong way can change the meaning of a document in a way that can be very negative for your client. So a lot of it is it's details, and dealing with the details is the grind that allows me to have the reward on the back end. It's really fun to sit down with a new writer, talk to them about their dreams, and send them off into the world with a lot of hope. I mean, that part's a blast. I love doing that. But what happens when those dreams start being fulfilled is a 30-page record deal comes back, and that's my responsibility. And it's there's nobody who can do it for you. You open it up and you read every word for 30 pages, and it's not exciting reading. It's very much copyright details, payment details, rights and obligations details, and there's nothing glamorous about that at all. But it's okay. I mean, I just look at it. There's a price for every job. There's something that's going to be the job, the grind of it, and that's what makes the back end worthwhile. So
Yeah.
it is. It is. There's a lot of emails, Word documents, a lot of Zoom calls these days. Um, there's in-person meetings were sort of dwindling anyway because of technology, but there's a lot less of that thanks to COVID. But when we start getting over the hump of COVID, I think a lot of the in-person meetings will come back. But there's some of that. But for the most part, probably 70% of my day involves emails and Word documents.
Yeah. So maybe not so glamorous every day, but a lot of fulfillment that comes along with your job, it sounds like. So,
Oh yeah, a lot of fulfillment for sure.
yes. So I know you didn't start out at the top of the top working with all these amazing artists. There was a journey that got you to where you are today. Could you tell us a little bit about what your journey looked like from high school to where you are now?
Oh goodness. I knew in high school I wanted to work with songwriters somehow, some way, and I ended up at the University of Kentucky, and that took me I went undergrad and law school at the University of Kentucky. There was no protocol, no curriculum to learn copyright law. I learned it on my own. I came here, had a job doing insurance defense, which was miserable, and that led to a lot of meetings and ultimately culminated in a job at a record label. I was a junior lawyer at RCA Records. And that's where I cut my teeth. I learned the business, I learned the people, I learned how it all worked together. But I knew I wanted to work with creators. I knew that the whole time. And I know that was a very brief discussion of a lot of years, but to get to the point where it hit me, I want to work with the creators of music. I didn't want to work for a company. I just wanted to help songwriters and artists. That's why I came to town. That's what I was here to do. And the only way to do that is if you start, well, not the only way for me to have done that as a lawyer was to start my own firm or to join up with another firm. And I was kind of in a career spot where joining up with another firm didn't quite make sense because I'd been practicing law for 10 years total, I guess. But I had no clients. When you work for a record label, you have one client. When you quit, you have 0 clients. So coming into a situation where I worked with another law firm didn't make a lot of sense. And I just took a leap of faith, and I bought a laptop and a backpack and rented an office and started a practice in 2007. And I had a lot of relationships in the business. I had a lot of people who told me they would send me work if I did it. Um, and they did. And I didn't start trying to find other people's clients or try to figure out how to get, you know, some somebody who was already successful to leave their attorney and come work with me. I started with people from the beginning of their career and intentionally did it that way. One, it's not cool to try to take people's clients, but two, it's just the way I wanted. I wanted to start from the bottom with people, build that relationship so that you're part of the entire journey rather than joining midway or towards the end of a journey.
Yeah.
So
So
that's what I did.
I mean, it sounds like through partnerships and building relationships, that's really how you built your business. And we hear that from so many industry professionals is how important networking is and building relationships. Would you say that that's probably been a key element of building this firm that you have now?
Oh, it's all about relationships, and you can't do it without the relationships. And I can look around town and I think about the people that were my friends that enabled me to do what I'm doing, and without them, it wouldn't. It, there's no way I could have done what I'm doing, but it's a two-way street. You help people, and they help you, and you do right by people, and you intentionally reach out to help people, and there's a lot of good people in Nashville, a lot of good people in the music business, and they will reciprocate that. And it's like anything else. I send people to my friends that work in creative positions. I have friends that are in A&R positions, which are the ones who sign people to record deals, and then some that are song pluggers at publishing companies, which are the ones that sign up songwriters. And I send them business not because I get anything returned, because I know them and I know they're good people and I know they're going to take care of my clients. When I have a client that comes and says, "Hey, what should I do?" And I'm back to what I was saying earlier, I really like helping them and I really believe that they need to be steered towards good people. If I'm friends with somebody, chances are I think they're a really good person. So I will steer them towards people that I'm friends with or have relationships with because I know that those people will help them achieve their goals rather than taking advantage of them. So that kind of works the other way is the people that I know in town know that I really care about my clients and really will really work hard to help them. So they send business to me. People can look at the industry is so small. People might say, well, that's incestuous or that's, an old boys network or whatever. It's really an old boys and girls network. There's plenty of diversity in the music business generally, but there's a small group of people that have these relationships, and if you don't understand how it all works, you might think, well, they're just all taking care of each other, they're all friends, this is weird. But really, it's you find like-minded people who care about doing the right thing and that want to really care and cultivate the careers of people who come to town, and we kind of share a common goal. Even though I'm a lawyer and they're a song plugger, an A&R person, we all came here because we wanted to be part of helping artists achieve their dreams. So it's cool when there's like-minded people that you can send the people you care about to them for help, and they do the same, and it all works. It really does. Everybody benefits.
Yeah, I love what you said that it's not all about people helping you. It's you give as well too. It's got to be that mutually beneficial relationship. So um, I know along the way, most people encounter obstacles in their professional career. Could you talk a little bit about how you have overcome obstacles in your professional journey and maybe any advice that you have for students who will ultimately face obstacles of their own?
Yeah. Well, there's always going to be obstacles. I mean, there can be somebody who doesn't believe in you, who's your boss, or so there's always going to be those challenges, and you just got to put your head down and work. I mean, that's number one. You've got to do a good job at what you're doing, and those things are going to happen. Typically, they take care of themselves. But one of the biggest obstacles that I see kids face, and that I faced early on, is back uh, when I first started in the music business, my first job was at a record label, and it was the most successful successful record label in Nashville at the time. I moved to Nashville to be in the music business, and I really wanted to be part of it. And I was part of it. And I had files upon files of contracts from Dolly Parton to Waylon Jennings to Alan Jackson to Kenny Chesney and all of these really, historic and successful acts, and they were all at my disposal. And I was in that system working as part of the music business, which should have been amazing, but it wasn't. I found myself coming back from lunch trying to drink 4 cups of coffee to get myself motivated to look at a 30-page document to make sure all the words lined up. And I didn't quite understand at the time. I thought, you know what, I want to be out on the other side of this so that I can get the reward of, like, at the end of the, there's an artist who's been helped, and I want to be part of that. And I don't get the touchy feelies working for the company. Maybe that would help, or maybe it's because I want my own office or to control my own hours and all that stuff. And none of that really mattered. At the end of the day, I was doing a job that I wasn't gifted to do. And I was gifted to, if there's one thing I'm really good at, it's counseling creative people. It's getting them to think the world's not coming to an end. It's getting them to creative people tend to be, what's the word? They're not typically great at taking care of their own business. They tend to be really nervous about the possibility of everything coming crumbling down upon them. They're worried that all of it's going to fall apart. They're worried that they're not good enough. They have a lot of unique things where they need counseling. They need people to encourage them. They need people to kind of pare down all the stuff that's distracting them from their goal and to point them in the right direction. And that's something that I'm gifted to do. It's nothing to be proud of. It's just, I show up and I can find an artist who wants to fire everybody on their team and thinks their entire career is a bust, and give me 30 minutes with them, and I can send them back out and with a plan where they think everything's okay. Like I said, it's nothing to be proud of. I showed up with that gift, right? I'm not gifted to make sure documents are accurate all day, every day. That's not I can do it as part of my job, but that's not part of my gifting. So what can happen is you have people that are in jobs and they're not gifted to do them, and they show up and they're not fulfilled, and they're not, there's no reward for them, and they don't understand why. And what I tell young people to do, or people that are not young, that are at a career crossroads or crisis, when they come see me, it's like, look, you need to think about what you're gifted to do. What do you show up that you're better at than most people generally? And you take whatever that is and figure out what job that applies to. You don't look and say, oh, well, the music business looks fun, therefore I'll be happy if I'm in the music business. Or, I like sports, so I want to work for the Tennessee Titans. If you're not gifted to do the job that you're doing within the Tennessee Titans organization, the fact that you work for a football team is going to get really old really quickly, because you're going to show up and be frustrated every day. And so I find that if you'll pay attention to what you're good at, and I've got spiritual beliefs that play into all of this, but I'll talk about it now. I really do believe that we're created for a purpose, and we're gifted for a purpose. And the reason that you're not fulfilled when you're not doing a job that you're gifted to do, it's so that hopefully you will turn towards something that you are gifted to do. Otherwise, you're wasting your gifts, right? So I think people that are unhappy in their job, or that are choosing the wrong career path, are trying to do something they're not gifted to do. And once you do something that you're gifted to do, and you're helping someone, that leads to fulfillment. And it doesn't matter whether the end result is glamorous or not. I'm fortunate the end result in my business seems glamorous to the outside world, right? It's fun. I got somebody on the CMA Awards accepting an award that I had a part of. That's great. But that doesn't mean you should get in the music business because of that. You get in the music business because there's a segment of the business which you're gifted to do where you can be great at it. And if you're not gifted to do a job, you'll never be great at it. I don't care how hard you want to work. And that's just reality. So when I see people with career obstacles, there's real things like a a boss that's horrible, or, you know, a situation where there's no room to grow because there's people above you that aren't going anywhere. There's things like that that are very real. But the biggest obstacle is people not understanding that notion, and they're trying to do something they're not gifted to do, and they're frustrated because they don't like their job and they're not good at their job.
Yeah, I mean, that is such good advice. I mean, I love that because so many times you hear as a young person, you know, if you enjoy your job, you won't work a day in your life, or, you know, you hear these things, but it's so important to figure out what you're naturally good at, what talents that you have, so that you can use those to better the world. I mean, I love that you said everyone has a purpose. That's really, really good advice.
It is true that you have a purpose, and and when you're using that purpose to serve people, and that's where it doesn't matter. And people get too caught up. Well, I want to work from home. I want to work here. I want to be my own boss. I want to, you know, whatever it is. All of those things are ancillary. If you're showing up, doing a job you're gifted to do, and serving someone else, you will go home at the end of the day feeling pretty good about things. And if you take the serving someone else part out, or the gifted part out, you won't. And the other things are helpful. Sure, it's nice not to have a, you know, 45-minute commute every day. That's great. It's really cool if you have a boss that believes in you. That's, you know, very encouraging. It's great when you don't have a boss and your own boss. That's great too. But none of it matters if you're not using your gifts to serve other people. And that's it. That's the key to job happiness, is those two things.
Yes, I love that. So you mentioned earlier that you have friends that work in different career paths that are still part of this connected network of helping songwriters or creative people in Nashville. One of my favorite questions to ask industry professionals is, you know, along the way as adults, we discovered different careers that maybe we didn't know existed when we were still in high school. I know all the time for me, I'm like, oh, that's a cool job. I had no idea that was even a thing. You could make money doing that. So could you talk a little bit about different careers that you've discovered along the way that maybe some of our young people listening don't even realize are opportunities?
Within the music business.
I
Yep.
mean, since music is your
Yeah, let's do
specialty,
that.
yeah.
Well, there's a great book, by the way. A guy named Don Passman, who's an attorney, wrote it. It's called All You Need to Know About the Music Business, and it breaks down a lot of the different roles and the different parts of the artist team that exist. And so, but within the artist team, there is a manager who is, they call them the personal manager, and they're the ones that deal with the day-to-day activities of an artist. So it's whether you got to be where you have to be, who has to be with you, how you're going to get there. You know, if you're going to be on the Today Show back when you didn't do it virtually, how are we going to get everybody to New York? Where are we going to stay? What time do you have to be there? Who do we go meet when we get there? And that's probably that from the outside looking in, that appears to be the most glamorous of the jobs within the artist team. But you'll find with every job that there appears to be good parts of, there's also things that are their price for doing it. And with the manager, the price for doing it is the mundane. You know, when the flights get delayed, that's your problem. When somebody on your team has a criminal past and can't get across the border in Canada to go play a show, and you find out 3 days before you're supposed to leave, that's your problem. How do we get a new guitar player? You know, and there's just a lot of the mundane that gets thrown at the artist manager, the personal manager. But if you love those details, and if you love constantly shifting terrain where you have to move parts around, and that's exciting to you, and there's lots of people who are gifted to do that and they love it, but their price to pay is little problems, the bus breaking down at 2 o'clock in the morning somewhere in Iowa. That's kind of your problem to a degree if you're the manager. But there's another part of the artist team is the business manager, and they're the ones that take care of the back end money. So they're paying your band members, they're collecting all of your royalties, they're hopefully putting them in the right buckets, pay taxes, savings, making sure you have the right deal on your bus lease, letting you know when you're making enough money to where you can get out of the van that everyone hates and actually get into a bus where you can have a bed to sleep in. They do a lot of that. And then So there's a difference between a business manager and a manager and an artist. So we all kind of work together collectively to help manage the artist's business. Each of us has our little segment of that. Then there's a booking agent who's in charge of making sure that there's shows to go play for the artists. The booking agents are in a challenging time right now. For the last year, their job has been not one that's been necessary because nobody's been playing shows. But when they are playing shows, and that seems to be picking back up, they're making sure everything's routed properly and you're playing the right venues and have the right size rooms and all of those things. So those are kind of I guess the four main roles on the artist team. But there's so many jobs out there in the music business. And one way to look at it is just if kids go to concerts, just look around and say, there's somebody who's running the soundboard. What are they doing? What's their role? Somebody was in charge of putting all the stuff up in the rafters and making sure it doesn't fall down on people. There's a road manager who makes sure everybody at the show that's on the artist team is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Everybody has the right tickets in place and the credentials, and family and friends are all there and get to go where they're supposed to go. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of different roles within that. I could name 50 other ones, I suppose, but there's.
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about. And I think that's great advice too. When you go to concerts, when you go to events, take a minute to look around and really observe who's working in what positions and what roles and what are they doing. Every single one of those positions is a career path that you might be gifted to do.
Right, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So my last question that I have for you is, what is some actionable advice that students could do right now, today, while they're still in high school, if they're interested in maybe a career path like yours?
Well, back to what we were talking about earlier, I think the number one thing to do is pay attention to what you're good at. Mm-hmm. Pay attention to what you're good at and start there and look at where does that apply and where does that apply within an industry I want to be in. And then from there, you can look at, okay, where should I, in high school, do I need to go to college? And if I do need to go to college, what kind of college do I need to go to in order to be in the best position to do what I think I want to do now? But I would say, don't think about what you like. Don't think about what you think is cool. Really drill down to, what do I show? Do I show up that I'm good at math, or is it like I'm terrible at math? And I look at math problems and it makes me want to run away. But for whatever reason, I could write a paper well. And so when I had a career crisis, my first one was in my sophomore year of college, and I showed up to a business class. I was a business major, and I showed up to my first semester of classes, and it was accounting, economics, statistics, and calculus. And I had a panic attack because I'm terrible at math. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And a counselor asked me the question, well, what are you good at? I was like, well, I made an A in English. And I was like, kind of good at writing papers. And she goes, well, you could be an English major. You could be an English major with a concentration in writing. And I'm like, really? I had no idea. So I knew it would be better than doing math all day. So that's where I changed to. But I would just encourage people, everything you do either needs to be working in your sweet spot that we talked about, a job that you're gifted to do that's helping other people, or a step towards that. And what I think a lot of people make mistakes, young people do, is expecting that you're going to get to that sweet spot in the first step. And a lot of times it's a journey to the sweet spot. But if you will keep focused on trying to get to the sweet spot, the journey becomes a little easier when you can look at it and say, okay, this job isn't ideal. I don't love this, but it's something I need to do in order to get to where I'm going to use my gifts to serve people. And, that's tough for a young person to grasp because you don't know for sure what you're good at. I was talking to my son not too long ago, and he goes, heck, I don't know that I'm good at anything. And I'm like, that's not true. You are good at stuff, but you have to have enough life experiences to come across things to be like, oh yeah, I am better at that than other people. And it's nothing to be, it's not that you're bragging, paying attention to that, or that you're trying to be better than somebody by paying attention to that. It's just being aware of what you're good at, and what you're good at, chances are, has to do with your purpose. And so I just think as much time and energy kids can spend thinking about that, rather than I want to go to school where I like the sports team, or I want to go to school where I have friends, or I want to go to school where my girlfriend's going. Like, go to the next step, because it's a step in your direction towards being able to help people with your gifts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned about your son and just thinking, I'm not good at anything. And I think that's a real phase that young people go through. I remember when I was in high school thinking, I'm not super athletic. I'm not musically talented. Like I'm just not good at anything. But when you really think about it, you can be good at listening. You can be good at building relationships. You can be good at communication. And each and every single one of those skills is something you can build a career on. You don't necessarily have to be the star of the show. There's so many other roles that
you make a great point, is those skill sets you're talking about typically don't relate to a grade and achievement in school, right? And it has nothing to do with it. So if you're looking at ways that whether you're good or not is being evaluated, and you're not good at academics, or you're not great at it, then you're gonna think that I don't necessarily have things I'm good at. You've got to get beyond that and look at those things. Like, if you're great at relationships, then that's important. But you don't get graded in high school on being great at relationships. It doesn't matter on the football team if you're great at relationships. I mean, it helps, but it doesn't make you run faster. So the things and for young people where achievement is rewarded, athletic accomplishment and academic accomplishment, sometimes don't encompass life skill sets that will ultimately allow you to achieve in the workplace. That's a great point. I never even thought about that.
Yeah. And so I love so much our conversation today. It's the main focus being on really finding what you're good at. And I think that's such a step that students can take while they're young. And I definitely encourage students to do that. So Scott, I've enjoyed talking with you today. I have no doubt students have really been inspired by your words. So thank you for being with us.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
Yes. And thank you to all of our viewers. Be sure and check back next week. We'll have a new industry professional that will bring tons of good advice, just like Scott did today. So you guys have a great day.